Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Voices podcast. My name is Isabelle Santin, and today, this month, we're going to be talking about a project of mine and of Chosen Few Software at large called SubverseIM. It's basically, uh, very briefly, it's a instant messaging client that uses peer-to-peer technology and end-to-end encryption to create an anonymous and private experience for its users. And of course, as the lead developer of this project, I wanted to invite a few of the other project teammates onto the podcast, and I will introduce them now. Hi, Polly. Hi, Eli.
Hi.
Hello there.
So Polly here is our project advisor slash testing lead, and Eli, of course, is our accessibility champion and advocate. He, um, basically helps me test out the app to make sure that it is usable for low vision users, as he is a low vision slash blind person himself.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, blind.
For sure. And Polly is very good at giving feedback and breaking the things that I make. So I'm
It's my job to break things.
precisely. So yeah, it's nice to have you both on the podcast. And without further ado, we can get started.
Yeah.
So first of all, what is Subverse IM? Well, I did already mention that it's a private, anonymous, peer-to-peer messaging platform, but it also is basically this mobile application. It's a mobile first application that basically, if you think about the how old Skype worked before Microsoft acquired it, it's basically that, but even more private and anonymous and on mobile devices as well, as that was something that the original Skype lacked.
Yeah, because I think the thing that sort of separates Subverse from all other instant messaging applications or just messaging applications in general is its privacy because, since it's completely end-to-end encrypted, since it's peer-to-peer, it's basically you can basically have any kind of conversation, like no matter how intimate, no matter how uh like basically if you have a conversation that's very private and intimate, unless someone posts a screenshot of what transpired during the conversation on a public forum, you're not going to get any of your information like exposed or stolen or anything like that. And I
Yeah,
think that's very important.
yeah, precisely.
Yeah, and I guess by the nature of Subverse being, open source and self-host from the get-go and not like an afterthought, there isn't really any risk of losing security or anything because it's going to be continuously updated. You don't have to necessarily rely on a big company to maintain it because the community can maintain it or you could maintain it.
Yeah, precisely. And that's the other big thing about this project is that we are dedicating all of its source code in entirety to the public domain. And I think that's important for two reasons. First of all, it means that anyone is free to redistribute the code, which is pretty important for a project like this because it means that it helps spread the word, but also it introduces redundancy within the community where we don't rely on a single point of failure or a single central place where people can get the source code. It's just kind of like this black market type deal, you know. I hate to make
Yeah,
that draw that analogy, but it's kind of like if you know, you know, and you
right.
can still get it even if the surveillance state attempts to take the network down.
Right. And
Yeah, I mean, I guess just put it in a better term than black market. It's unregulated from like big media. There
Yeah,
is no overbearing single owner or shareholder. And there's no
Right.
negative intentions behind it because the intentions are literally whatever you want to add to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
precisely.
They're not appealing to any. They're not appealing, or anyone's not appealing to any shareholders. They don't have any trends to catch up with.
Yeah,
Literally, it's just
It's a
whatever
co-
you want it to be.
yeah, it's a community sort of managed network.
yeah, and what's really important is that there's no one central authority either. Everyone contributes the same amount to the network.
Yeah, exactly. Because with with the great big media corporations and sort of this age we're living in with with a very centralized internet, it's very difficult to really feel like you're a part of a community when there's bound to be some sort of larger hand sort of regulating what is said and what isn't said, what is posted, what's not posted, and it's very it feels very like intimidating. And I think that with Subverse, since it is completely community managed, there's really a sense of freedom and ability to be able to like keep not only keep what you share not only keep what you exchange private, but also make it a very uh positive community experience.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think the other part of it is that you get it, it allows you and your friends to seize the means of communication. There's no external server that you're relying upon to be able to engage in a conversation using this app. It basically allows you to not only own your data, but own the means of communication itself. And I think that that's super important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a big thing in general is just trust. I think we put a lot of blind faith in tech companies to ensure that our data is safe, that it's not going to be leaked, that it's secure, that it's encrypted, that they aren't looking at it. So by having it be exposed in this way, the code, the platform, it allows people to make the decision for themselves whether or not they believe it's trustworthy, if it's secure enough, and if it's not, then they can always make it more secure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that kind of is a good segue into sort of a architecture overview of the app. Basically, the way that SubverseIM works, there's three main components. There's OpenPGP encryption, there's the BitTorrent DHT, and then there's the Bootstrapper web API. Essentially, OpenPGP encryption is an encryption standard that was made all the way back in the 90s. I know, such a long time ago, right? And essentially, what this model of encryption and sort of public key infrastructure, this standard promotes is that it's essentially a web of trust is what it's called, where you can establish authenticity mutually via mutual authentication, which basically means if I can prove to you that I am who I say I am, and you can do the same for me, we can still be anonymous, but still trust each other and still communicate securely between each other. And so that's the big thing that OpenPGP as a standard contributes to the SubverseIM project. Outside of that, we also use the BitTorrent DHT. A DHT is that stands for distributed hash table. Essentially, this is what we use in the Subverse network to associate people's public key identities or their Subverse peer IDs with their IP address. And you might say, whoa, hold on, people can see my IP address? That's a pretty big flaw, right? And actually, the thing that SubverseIM does to sort of be more private, even though we need to communicate directly with each other's IP addresses, is we essentially associate multiple IP addresses with a single peer ID. So even if someone were to sort of hack the system and try and see what your IP address is, they would instead get a list of IP addresses of all the people that you're talking to or are associated with, which means that they can't trace down any single one of them to you specifically. And so the final aspect of it is the Bootstrapper Web API, which is basically just a web server that keeps track of minimal information that basically allows all of the participating peers on the network to basically synchronize their routing information and figure out how to talk to each other directly. And so, in this way, the Subverse network does have sort of more of a multi-server architecture, but it does so in a way that the core functionality still isn't dependent on those centralized servers.
Yeah, and I would add that, basically all message and file information, if you send an attachment to someone, that stuff is stored locally on their machine. So it's completely peer to peer in that, it like and it's completely peer to peer in that everything that is exchanged, whether it be information or files, is stored locally on either end. And also, how services like Discord and stuff can allow you to edit messages. Subverse doesn't really allow that, and it basically says, and I think that's a good thing because it sort of allows the user to preserve their chat history authentically, so that in case if something, questionable is going on and it gets shared publicly, there's no kind of revisionist history going on.
Yeah, for sure. And so the other important aspect about these Bootstrapper web servers is that because SubverseIM is open source, anyone can roll their own one of these servers, and if they don't trust our server, just roll your own and use your own one. It's all totally customizable in that way.
Yeah.
And the final point that I want to sort of cover briefly here about SubverseIM is that it uses all of these sort of more standard technologies, including SIP, which is a signaling protocol for voice over IP technology. Um, we use all of these more standard technologies in an effort to eventually become cross-compatible with other private messaging services like perhaps Matrix or even Signal, for example.
Yeah.
And moving on to sort of our next big segment here is why make this at all? And there's a few reasons why. Of course, as Chosen Few Software, we believe in a world where software empowers its users, not the other way around. Because, too often do we have like web services or like apps that, like killer apps that don't respect their users for what they are. Users are kind of like the lifeblood of these technologies.
Right.
And I'm kind of the way I think about it is, for example, Chat GPT. If you're a Chat GPT user, you are as much used as you are a user,
Right,
right?
because your input is basically used to mine like data and train the neural network essentially.
Yeah.
Precisely.
So a lot of social medias and things like that, the way they view you is you are the product to them. You
Precisely,
are not
yes.
the buyer, you're not the user, you are their product. Especially when it comes to data and having your data be sold on.
Right. It's sort of it's in it, and it's I think what's really great about chosen few software as like the basic philosophy of software should empower the user is like on the especially on the accessibility front, having the ability to customize and also to be able to use any of these pieces of any of the pieces of software that children's use software makes, especially Subverse, being able to use those without having any with having like some kind of physical disability that prevents uh the average user from, or that prevents these people from having a in having an enjoyable or just practically effective experience is very important, because as Izzy said, far too often software uses their users as much as users use their software. So
Precisely.
so when you so when it comes to accessibility, that philosophy that is shared among the bigger centralized software packages is it's basically closing off an entire demographic of people. And
Yeah.
I think that it's very liberating that chosen few software is cares enough about accessibility and treats its software from an accessibility first standpoint, that basically it's very liberating to know that people like me who are basically blind and can't use apps like Discord for precisely the reasons I specified. It's very liberating to be able to you still communicate and have connections with people online, even though have a major physical disability.
Yeah, for sure. And that brings us really nicely to our next point here, which is connecting people matters, right?
Yeah,
I mean, especially across the internet, most of my friends in my early adulthood were online friends, and I, including Polly, of course.
right.
And so allowing this sort of kind of authentic way of connecting people in a way that is also private and safe, I think is ex- extremely empowering for the people that we're serving here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and if say any part of Subverse is not considered accessible to you outside of what we already do to make it accessible, whether that be a physical accessibility need, a mental accessibility need, or even just wanting to access Subverse on an obscure device or something, the open
Yeah,
source nature will allow you or anyone else to try and implement that. So, for say, for example, social media and stuff isn't exactly straightforward for older people, but maybe you want to be more in touch with your older relatives, then Subverse could be developed for a more straightforward usage. Simplify the UI, simplify the process of going to messages and stuff. It could even be used to be deployed on something like I don't know what I remember they're called, but like the Facebook mirrors,
Oh, yeah.
something.
Hmm.
Like the smart was like image like
Yeah,
displays
totally.
that you can
Hmm.
use to like the video call people and stuff. It could be programmed for something like that as well.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
and to
And
make it
that helps connect everyone together a bit more.
For
yeah, and
sure.
to like even to go to like the extreme, perhaps it like I don't know how feasible this would be, but perhaps due to its open source nature, people could make it compatible with like very old like devices and computers that not many people use these days, but like either people who use it as a novelty or in some cases use it on a daily basis. they might be able to still connect with those people on those older computers and devices that just aren't supported anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
definitely.
helps reduce the redundancy of older tech and more obscure tech.
Yeah,
Reminds me a lot of how lots of people try to backport any ideas to like homebrew on like old consoles and stuff.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
Yeah,
I watched a
totally.
video the other day of someone trying to run Linux on an NES.
Oh, I think I may have seen that. Or,
But if you could do something like that, you could probably put Subverse on anything.
yeah,
Yeah, for
as
sure.
as long as it has the ability to connect to a local network.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's also what's really cool about uh .NET as a technology that we use for SubverseIM is that it's totally cross-platform and it's portable by design. And so if you can run Linux on an NES, you can pretty much run Subverse as well, albeit a probably very limited version of it due to the difference in computer architecture. I mean, an NES has like what, kilobytes of memory? I
Yeah,
don't think even that,
The
you know,
physical
like
constraints are definitely a tackle to get over, but
yeah,
it doesn't make anything impossible.
right,
yeah, for
because
sure.
the NES doesn't even have like an Ethernet port or like a RJ11.
And so you might be wondering, first of all, how do I get started with Subverse IM? We're talking all this good shit about it. Well, where can I get it? Where can I start using it? And you are in luck because open beta testing for Android devices via Google Play starts at the end of this month, at the end of February 2025. And so it's something that the entire team here at Chosen Few Software has been working very hard at and are super proud of to be able to present to everyone in the community. And we're looking forward to having our app be broken in many, many more ways than what we've already considered, and so that we can fix it and make it better and make it the best experience that it can be.
Yeah,
Additionally, we also have a closed beta for iOS available to VIPs and via vetted email approval. If you would like to participate in iOS closed beta testing for Subverse, please email us at root@subverse.network and we can get you started on it. Apart from that, you can also, because SubverseIM is open source, you can sideload it on Android or iOS anytime by compiling the app yourself and using your own certificates. And of course, you can contribute to the network at large and boost its redundancy by running your own Bootstrapper node instances on web hosts and sharing them with others. So that's basically the big sell, right?
yeah,
Is you can use it right now. It exists and it's ready to be tested at the very least. I wouldn't call it a um robust experience by any means. It's still in very early stages of beta testing.
yeah, and I think and for the purpose of being able to improve the app, I think we should also encourage feedback from our user base, whether it be open beta or closed beta, or really anyone who's using the app, because feedback, since we approach our software from a user first perspective, we always are looking for feedback and way constructive feedback in ways that we can change or improve the app to suit the need of the users as they come.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that brings this the meat of this podcast to a close. Before we send everyone off, I did want to just kind of make space for us to wrap up and maybe each of us share one thing we want listeners to take away from the podcast.
Yeah,
So I'll go first. The one thing I want listeners to take away is that SubverseIM is our network. It's built by us for us. It's for the normies of the world, you know? It's not for the data miners. It's not for the shitty governments that want to spy on us. It's for us. And it's private, it's secure, it's anonymous. You can get started with pretty much no strings attached. It's very much zero risk. And so, even if you try it just once with one friend, that would make a world of difference for us and allow us to continue building the experience to be the best it can be.
Yeah.
And
My one thing that I would like people to take away from this is if you have ever felt frustrated by any social media or anything like an app or anything, and you felt like, I don't like this feature, or I don't think this company is got my best interests in mind, or I don't want to have to pay for like a fancy cosmetic, then just try out Subverse. We're not necessarily at a point where we can start competing with other people, but it will only get better from here. It
For
can
sure.
never go down.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and the thing I think I want to have everyone take away from this is, you know, you know, intimacy, like being able to have intimate conversations and being able to confide in your friends or your loved ones over the internet, I think is very important because, and I think Subverse, if you want to be able to feel safe in confiding in your friends and loved ones over the internet without risk of it being, exposed or like having your privacy breached or having, things that you don't want the general public to know, but you want your friends to know. I think that Subverse is the program for you because it's rare in these times that we can have that anyone on the internet can have a close friend or a close relationship without something leaking out to the public and sort of causing immense stress for the people involved. I think Subverse is a program that, out of all the programs available on the internet right now, I think it's a program that permits intimacy and having private important conversations and sharing important data with each other without necessarily being at risk of having your world turned upside down.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so thank you so much, both of you, for joining me on the podcast. Um, I really think that Subverse IM has the potential to become the internet's next killer app, and that's what's perhaps the most exciting prospect of all in working on this project. And I'm just so glad to that we can share this with the community finally and share it with each other as well. It means a lot to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for having us on.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so
Yeah.
much. Bye,
Be the
everyone.
change you want to see in the world.
Hell yeah.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.